PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome is becoming more and more common. There are so many women now struggling with this condition. So, we're going to dive into the most common 9 signs that you may be struggling with PCOS. So, here we go. Number one is if your sex drive is very high. So, as females, our sex drive should actually change throughout the month. But if you continuously have a very high sex drive, especially if it's higher than your man's, then that is likely a sign that hormones are imbalanced. Typically, your testosterone is higher, and that could actually be a sign that you may be dealing with PCOS. Number two is feeling fatigued all the time. Often, women with PCOS or any sort of hormone condition, they actually struggle with fatigue. And that's because your adrenals play a major role in your hormone balance. And if adrenals are struggling, it's very common that you're going to have imbalanced cortisol throughout the day and you could struggle with fatigue. For a lot of women, I see that they are having that afternoon crash. For others, it's that really big struggle in the morning to start the day where they're reliant on caffeine. So if that sounds like you, getting your hormones tested would be the best place to start because it does sound like there could be some sort of hormone imbalance going on. Number three is having hair that's growing in unwanted places. So, as females, we should not be getting facial hair. We should not be getting hair in places where it shouldn't be growing. And a lot of times with PCOS, because it's a hormone imbalance, and specifically women with PCOS have their testosterone that's converting into a stronger testosterone metabolite, this causes more of those androgenic types of symptoms. So you may notice that you're having to shave your face. Maybe there's hair growing under your belly button. Those are common signs that you may have PCOS or at least have some sort of hormone imbalance that could possibly be PCOS. Number four is if your period is absent or if it's very irregular. So women that just don't get their period for a long period of time, that is not normal. That is a sign that there is something imbalanced going on in the body and hormones are out of whack. If your hormones are balanced, you're going to cycle where you ovulate every month and then get your period. So if that's not happening, then odds are you may not be ovulating. And then because of that, you may not get your period. It's possible for some women to also have very long cycles. So a lot of my patients with PCOS end up going every 50 days, or maybe 1 month, it's 55 days in their cycle, and then the next month it comes right at 30 days. And if it alternates like that, or even is random with different time periods that your cycle is lasting, that's a very good indication that you likely have some sort of hormone imbalance, and it does sound like it could be PCOS. If when you're getting your period is heavy, it's painful, you get bad cramping, you have those PMS, classic PMS symptoms, it is so important to know that for a female, it is not normal to have bad periods. It is common, very, very common, but it is not normal. So if you are having any sort of those unwanted symptoms around your period, then that's indicative of some type of hormone imbalance. And it's worth testing those hormones completely to get an understanding of what's really going on. Because if it is PCOS, there's a lot we can really do in order to improve those hormones and balance things out so you don't continue to deal with that. Number six, the sixth sign that you may have PCOS is if you're struggling with weight, especially around the midsection. So women with PCOS, actually 50 to 70% of women with PCOS are also going to have insulin resistance. When you have insulin resistance, you'll find that you gain weight, especially around the midsection, and it's very difficult to lose that weight. So if your diet is higher in carbohydrates, higher in sugars, then you're more likely to develop insulin resistance. So one of the best ways to actually really reduce your risk of PCOS and to even heal from PCOS is to start cutting out sugars. The seventh sign that you may have PCOS is having acne, especially here around the jawline. So if you're having breakouts that happen on your skin leading up to your period, often it's the week prior to your period or as your period begins, but it could even be any time of the month, especially along that jawline, and if it's cystic. Those are very, very common to see when people have PCOS because your hormones are imbalanced and they're converting down into a very potent testosterone metabolite. This tends to develop cystic acne. So in order to heal the acne, it's not going to be something topical. It's going to have to take figuring out what's causing that hormone imbalance and actually healing the hormones so that you can get to the root cause of the issue and truly heal the skin. Another major sign of PCOS is infertility. 70 to 80% of people with infertility that are struggling to conceive have PCOS. And a lot of times it goes undiagnosed because if you don't have all of the symptoms, a lot of women are dismissed, but it doesn't take having every single one of these symptoms. You may have one or two and still actually have PCOS or very similar hormone imbalances that look like PCOS. So if you have been trying to conceive, you're struggling to get pregnant, it is worth considering that your hormones are likely imbalanced and it may resemble something like PCOS, especially if you have had any ovarian cysts. So if you've had an ultrasound done and if they've ever mentioned that there were cysts on your ovaries, then that right there is a hormone imbalance that's causing that. And we can actually do a lot to help support the body to stop those cysts from forming so that when you're ovulating, you are still cycling through and it's not forming a cyst that's going to cause infertility and pain and other symptoms. Now, the ninth sign that you may have PCOS is experiencing anxiety and depression or any sorts of changes in your mood. With anxiety and depression, that a lot of times will fluctuate throughout the month, and often women with hormone imbalances notice that it's worse leading up to their period, maybe even on their period, and for some women it happens more around ovulation. So if it's mid-cycle, that's a really important sign as well that there's some sort of hormone imbalance going on. Hormones do so much to impact our mood, impact how we feel on a daily basis. So if you're just not feeling right, you just feel off, it is worth testing your hormones. It's worth checking into it to understand what's actually going on. And if you relate to any of these symptoms or these signs that you may have PCOS, we can get you tested no matter where you live. We work with patients throughout the United States virtually. We can run your hormone labs in a very in-depth way. It is so important to run comprehensive testing and not just run a couple markers through blood work. If we're just running a few markers through blood work, oftentimes we're going to miss the bigger picture. Sometimes, and very commonly with PCOS, women are having more of a conversion issue with their hormones. They may look fine on blood work, but then when we run a Dutch test, which is testing your hormones through urine to look at metabolism, that's sometimes the key to uncovering what's really going on. And that's often when we're able to pinpoint what your liver is actually doing with your hormones, how it's converting your hormones, and sometimes that's where we pinpoint that they could be dealing with PCOS or something similar. So if you are dealing with any of these signs, these symptoms that I spoke about in this video, reach out and we'd love to get you scheduled to go through in-depth hormone testing, figure out what your hormones are looking like, and get you on a path toward optimal health and wellness and balance out your hormones so that you could live a life free from symptoms.